Ma, do you need me to repeat that again? The officer said, turning his screen toward me without lowering his voice. People behind me stopped moving, a few even leaning forward, trying to catch what was happening at the window. The spouse you listed is already legally married, he added, tapping the screen like it settled everything instantly. Registered marriage 10 years ago, he said, calm and precise. Which makes your certificate completely invalid under current law. The line on the screen was clean, almost cold, like it had been waiting years to surface. LauraFu.spouse.verified. It didn't blink, didn't hesitate, didn't leave room for interpretation or denial. I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice, didn't even ask for clarification because there was nothing unclear anymore. I stepped aside, pulled out my phone, and called him, dialing the number I had trusted for 10 years. He picked up almost immediately, like he had been expecting this moment long before I arrived there. They told you already? He asked, no pause, no confusion, no attempt to pretend or soften the impact. I did marry Laura, he said casually, like explaining paperwork. It was for the green card situation. Her kid needed status, he added, voice steady. Like this was practical, reasonable, something anyone would understand eventually. Someone nearby muttered under their breath, something like that's insane. But no one stepped in or questioned further. He continued talking, you waited 10 years already. What's a few more years honestly at this point? When the kid turns 18, we can register properly, he said. Like scheduling a delayed appointment, nothing emotional involved. I looked at my reflection in the glass, pale, still, like someone watching a stranger make decisions. I don't marry married men, I said quietly, and hung up before he could respond or reframe it. Then I texted my assistant, short and clear. No hesitation, no explanation, no second thought at all. Terminate all of Jason Fu's overseas contracts immediately, and freeze every card registered under his name today. By the time I walked out of the building, his car was already waiting right outside the entrance. Get in, he said through the window. Don't make a scene here. This isn't the place for that. I opened the door, but paused for half a second when I saw who was sitting beside him. Liu Mei was in the passenger seat, smiling gently. Like everything about this situation was completely natural. I'm not feeling great today, she said softly, so I took the front seat. Hope that's okay. He glanced at me, watching carefully, waiting for a reaction, measuring whether I would comply or explode. I didn't give him either. I simply walked around and got into the back seat without saying anything. He hesitated, just briefly, like something didn't go according to the script he had imagined earlier. Emily, don't be emotional, he said while starting the engine, tone controlled, almost instructive in its calmness. This is just a procedural issue, he added, like paperwork could erase 10 years of shared life instantly. Liu Mei leaned slightly toward him, voice low. We're still family. Nothing really changes between us. I didn't respond, didn't look at them, didn't acknowledge the version of reality they were offering me. The car stopped in front of a Michelin restaurant, one he chose without asking for my opinion. He led me inside directly, confident, like ownership extended to every space he walked into with ease. The staff recognized him immediately and guided us to a table without asking any questions or confirmations. He ordered for me without consulting, as if my preferences were already known, or simply irrelevant now. Liu Mei pushed her steak toward him. Can you cut this for me? She asked lightly, almost playfully. The child tugged at his sleeve, asking to be fed, and he complied naturally, without hesitation or discomfort. They looked like a complete family, seamless, practiced. Something that had existed long before I noticed anything wrong. I sat there, present but unnecessary, like a guest tolerated at a table I once believed belonged to me. Go ahead, I said finally. breaking the silence that had been growing heavier with every passing second. He was pouring wine, steady hand, avoiding eye contact. No rush, he said, delaying what he already knew. The next second, the child knocked over the glass, red wine spilling across the table in sudden chaos. Liu Mei gasped softly, and he stood up immediately. I'll take him to the restroom, already moving. Before leaving, he glanced back at me. Wait for me, he said, like I had any reason left to. They didn't come back. 10 minutes passed, then 20, then 40, and the room began to shift around me. The restaurant started closing procedures, lights dimming slightly, staff moving differently. People noticing me sitting alone there. A waiter approached, tone no longer warm, no longer polite, just controlled and distant enough to signal something. Ma'am, we're closing soon, he said. Your bill comes to $150,000 tonight. Not loud, but perfectly audible. Calibrated so nearby tables could hear without effort or obstruction at all. Someone behind me laughed quietly. There's no way she can pay that. Like the conclusion was obvious. Another voice added more directly, probably some kind of visa scam. And phones were already being raised. My phone lit up at that exact moment, his message appearing like a final move in a game. I stopped your card, it read. Let's see what you do now without any of my support. Another message followed immediately. Apologize to Liu Mei, or stay there and deal with it yourself. I looked up. No one was pretending anymore. Every eye in the room was openly fixed on me. Call your manager, I said calmly. Tell him Emily Carter is here and needs to speak now. The waiter hesitated. If you're unable to pay, he began, already preparing the next escalation step. Call him, I repeated, not louder, but final enough that it didn't invite negotiation or interpretation. Someone laughed again. She's stalling. And another voice suggested calling the police to resolve everything quickly. The waiter paused, then turned and walked away, unsure, but unwilling to ignore the name I had given. I didn't move, didn't check the bill again. I simply took out the card and held it up. Then I snapped it in half, clean, deliberate, and dropped it into the trash where everyone could see. The manager arrived almost running, stopped when he saw me, recognition shifting his entire posture instantly. Ms. Carter, he began, but I cut him off before he could finish the sentence. Why haven't you called the police yet? I asked, pointing briefly toward the ceiling cameras above us. He froze, confused, recalculating everything, while the room fell into a different kind of silence entirely. Malicious dine and dash, I said evenly, according to your policy. That's a tenfold recovery penalty. No one laughed this time. Not a single sound. Even the phones lowered slightly, uncertain now. Send the bill to Jason Fu, I added. Include the penalty. Make sure every detail is documented. I stood up, left the table, and walked out without looking back at anyone in that room. The next day, same restaurant, same table, but this time he was the one sitting there waiting. The manager placed the bill in front of him. $1.5 million, he said without hesitation. Jason smiled at first, like this was some misunderstanding, then reached for his card confidently. The transaction failed. He tried again. Failed. A third card, same result, no approval from the bank. People nearby started recognizing him, whispers spreading. Isn't that him? The consultant from that firm. I thought he'd just bought a house, someone said, the tone shifting from admiration to curiosity to doubt. He stepped aside to make a call, but the bank only gave him one clear answer. The account has been frozen by the primary holder, they said, leaving no room for appeal. He stood there, exposed, while the manager remained in place, unmoved, waiting for payment without sympathy. He asked Liu Mei for her bag, then jewelry, bracelets, rings, anything that could be used immediately. The child started crying, confused, overwhelmed, while Liu Mei's face turned pale under the pressure of eyes. This time, everyone was watching him, not me, and no one looked away or pretended indifference. That afternoon, at the press conference, the lights were bright, and every major outlet was present. I stood on stage, composed, Emily Carter. I introduced myself, voice steady, clear, controlled. Primary investor of Northbridge Capital, I added, and the atmosphere shifted almost instantly across the room. For the past 10 years, I continued. Jason Fu's projects, labs, and funding all came through me. Silence spread, heavier than before, as the implications started settling in for everyone listening. He built his career using those resources, I said, pausing briefly, letting the weight land properly. And he built another life, through another marriage. That was never meant to include me at all. The screen behind me lit up, displaying transaction flows, contracts, records. Everything aligned and undeniable. Reporters began raising questions rapidly, but I lifted my hand, signaling them to wait a moment. Effective immediately, I said. All investments related to Jason Fu are terminated without exception. I paused again, just long enough, and full financial recovery proceedings have already been initiated. Someone asked about the amount, voices overlapping, urgency rising. What's the total exposure involved here? Close to $100 million, I answered, and the room erupted instantly with reactions and noise. I looked directly into the cameras, steady, unflinching. No hesitation left anywhere in my expression. I didn't lose 10 years, I said. I just finally understood exactly what he was worth.